So should I just start? Okay, hello out there and welcome to the Norfolk Hub Talks series on climate change. I'm Dawn Whalen. I'm the Executive Director for the Norfolk Foundation, and I'm so excited to be having this webinar this evening. It is almost a full year since we've had a talk like this, and our first virtual one at that. So I'm very excited. Back in January, Tamara contacted me with an idea about a series on climate change. And here we are today, ready to kick off the first one. So I just want to give a little introduction. And first, though, I do want to thank our co-hosts, our co-sponsors, the Norfolk Library, the Norfolk United Church of Christ Green Group, and of course, the Norfolk Climate Coalition, of which Tom is a member. The Norfolk Climate Coalition is a grassroots group of concerned citizens exploring ways our community can address the opportunities and challenges of our changing climate. Tom is one voice in this climate coalition. In addition to his involvement with the Norfolk Climate Coalition, Tom is also involved with community organizing, biodiversity conversation, teaching finance and risk management, writing, and enjoying the beauty of the natural world and cultural diversity. If anyone is interested in learning more about the Norfolk Climate Coalition, please email norfolkccct@gmail.com. That is the word Norfolk, CCC, letter T, @gmail.com. And we'll also put the address in the chat. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Great, thank you, Dawn. Well, I'm delighted that we can have this inaugural talk on climate issues in our community. Thanks everybody for showing up. I see we have 80 participants. That's really exciting. There was a reason that we reached out to Great Mountain Forest and Tamara, and she's got a great Basque name. I'm gonna say it, and she's welcome to correct me because it's really a beautiful name, but Basque is a different language. But Tamara Muruetagoiena.
Pretty good.
Close, maybe.
That's very good. Thank you.
But what's really important about this talk is that we have this bastion of really good science in our community that can really help us to understand how our climate is changing and how it affects our lives. So we have a working forest and a working laboratory right here in our community. So it's with great delight that we have Tamara here to talk about our changing climate and how Great Mountain Forest connects with our community and a changing climate. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tamara.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for being in this webinar. This is my first presentation on a webinar, so it's really strange not to see the audience and feel the energy, because I am one of those people who loves to feel the energy in the room. But I also want to thank the organizers. I'm very honored to be here today talking about my favorite topic, which is climate change and Great Mountain Forest. So yes, thank you.
You can go ahead and share your screen. I've made you host.
Wonderful. Here it is. So, throughout my presentation, I'm going to show beautiful pictures from this incredible photographer, nature photographer, Tom Blackman, who is so incredible and takes the most beautiful pictures of our forest and is working with us and helping us on our communication efforts. So you can also sign up for our newsletters and we'll share more pictures of him with you that way. But first of all, let's talk about what is Great Mountain Forest. I get that asked sometimes, what is it? And where do you work? And so Great Mountain Forest is over 6,000 acres of continuous forest in the northwestern corner of Connecticut. And that makes it one of the largest forests in the state. And it's a diverse forest. And its focus is on sustainable forest management with different forest products, including maple syrup, witch hazel, timber, or carbon credits. And I'll talk about carbon credits in my presentation more. But if I had to define what is our #1 forest product, that will be carbon. It's kind of strange to say it, but that's what we are. Also, we're dedicated, as Tom said, to research, education, and recreation. So we really link with the community, and it's kind of a place where, you know, humans and nature are there together. Sorry. So I wanted to talk a little bit about other things that we do in the forest that are not necessarily forest products or recreation. So what is the ecosystem services? So we provide ecosystem services, and those are, for example, clean air or clean water. We're a habitat for large mammals. I know that many of you are very excited to see our webcams with to see moose. And I am very proud to say that we have spotted 21 moose in our forest. We also are a habitat for bird species. And very important now with climate change, we are a resilient forest that can withstand disease and weather events. And that will be key also in this talk about climate change. But also a big part of those ecosystem services is human health. And we offer passive recreation in the form of hiking, mountain biking, cross-country skiing, yoga, bird watching, meditation, you name it. We also, in a way, slow the spread of vector-borne diseases like Lyme's disease, having a well-maintained habitat for different species. And also another important thing for human health is mental health. And there are many, many studies that are out there that show that spending time in nature is good for your mental health. And also, you know, I was talking about those pictures. It's also a place where you have this sense of awe, this place that is this connection with something that is difficult to describe and is something larger. And that is something that most people feel when they come to our forest. So let's dive into climate change. So I sometimes get asked, so what would be the effects of climate change in Connecticut? And there's more and more science these days that is telling us what will happen, but it's a moving process. So with more time, we'll have more information. But for now, we know that extreme weather events will get worse. So for example, hurricanes. And I think everyone remembers last year, Hurricane Isaiah, and how devastating it was for the state of Connecticut. Many residents in Norfolk, in Falls Village, where our forest is, they lost their power for over a week, and they were without water for several days. It was a disaster. It was really tough on our forest too. We lost a lot of trees. And so weather events like that will increase with climate change. Also, there will be an increase of heat, and that means less snow in the winter, which, for example, for a forest that produces maple syrup like ours, that is devastating. And definitely for the production of maple syrup in the state of Connecticut, that is devastating because you need several days or weeks of frost to have proper sap in the trees. And also flooding. Flooding will be big in the state of Connecticut with climate change. And so what is that we do at Great Mountain Forest in terms of in relationship with climate change? Was something very, very important, and that we were one of the first weather stations in the region. We have been collecting weather data for the last 90 years. That is every single day in the same spot for the last 90 years, we have been taking weather data. So we take temperature data and precipitation data. So the data that we have shows us how the climate has changed over time, but also what peaks have been showing in history. And we can see some weather events and other things that have happened in the last few decades. I must say that I've been the executive director at Great Mountain Forest for about 1.5 years. And I had read many scientific reports on climate change. And we all have read articles in newspapers about, rising temperatures, etc. But it's always third-party data. It's kind of somewhere out there. But it was really frightening to see our own data collected at our own station, and to see that our climate is really changing and is really getting hotter. We also, because of our maple syrup production, we're able to have that kind of data for the syrup itself, for the production of sap, but also for the phenology of the trees during that period of the production. And we have data for already 76 years. So that's a wealth of data that can be shared with others and make correlations with the weather data. And also, as I mentioned before, because of the moose, we have, as part of our wildlife management, we have an anecdotal wildlife census. And so we know what kind of species are where at what different time. And the last but not least is how we're involved with climate change is through carbon credits. So many of you will ask, so what are carbon credits and what is carbon sequestration, right? So as I said before, our main forest product is carbon from a financial standpoint, but also from an operational standpoint. And how does that work? So carbon is stored in a forest. Different types of carbon is stored in a forest in the biomass. That means the living trees, the branches, the leaves, the roots, the soil, the dead organic matter. All of that is how the ecosystem sequesters that carbon. And so in a carbon credit market, landowners like ourselves receive credits for that with financial value for that stored carbon. All of that carbon credit market started a few decades ago with the Kyoto Protocol, and it created this new currency. So forests like ourselves, we enter this compliance agreement, and a compliance agreement means that we have a standard for the kind of practices that we can follow in the forest. And our compliance agreement is for 100 years. You heard it. So for 100 years, we're selling our carbon, and that means we're also making sure that that carbon is stored in our forest. So it has that duality of, it has a dual benefit. And so what happens with those credits? Then we have sold them to the state of California. And why California, not Connecticut? Well, the reason why we sell it to California is because the US as a country has not created a federal system for carbon credit programs. So different states do different, they enter the market in a different way. And the most advanced state is the state of California. And so through this agreement, some companies are allowed to emit the carbon that they're buying, but once they engage into that process, they're in a process improvement kind of program. That means that they need to reduce the amount of carbon over time if they buy carbon credit. So it's a win-win situation, I think, because for a forest like ours, we make sure that we keep our forest in our carbon in the forest, but also there are other companies that are working towards, they're coming into an agreement to reduce their carbon output. So the sale of the carbon credits has given us, has allowed us to keep our forests, our programs, and we evolve with this program over time and learning from it. And we also have to keep storing more carbon as time goes on. As I said, it's so hard without seeing all of you in the audience. So I named this slide, Global is the New Local. So when I was asked to present here, I was asked to link Great Mountain Forest with the community. So what is the Great Mountain Forest community? So that community is extending from where we physically are in the northwest corner of Connecticut to the state level, to the regional level, to the national level, and to the global level. Because nature doesn't follow boundaries. We humans create them artificially. And climate change is a global concern. And what we do in one place affects another. And that is definitely a borderless approach. And I have to say that my legacy, the work that I really want to do for Great Mountain Forest is connecting us and create that bridge from our region to the state, to the national level and to the international level. And so when we, so how do we define that and how do we do that? We have created a vision at Great Mountain Forest to expand what is our community. We still are an asset to our local community, but we're connecting with other organizations and participating in dialogues in different places. So the first one is the Governor Lamont Council of Climate Change. So that is a Connecticut initiative created by our governor, and I was invited to become a member of the council. The council is composed of different experts on environmental sciences, environmental work, and we do recommendations. We create recommendations on climate change, and those recommendations will be taken by our lawmakers and create policy out of them. Also, some of the work that we're doing at Great Mountain Forest and I'm deeply engaged with is because we have this carbon credit program, but also because we care so much about climate change. We really want to know how forest carbon is stored. And we want more research on that. Right now, there's not that much data that links how forests are managed and how they store that carbon. There's some research, but not enough. And so we want to promote that kind of research. And we're collaborating with universities and research centers to have more of carbon research, but also invite researchers to Great Mountain Forest and do their research in our forest. Also, we're members of the Forest Ecosystem Monitoring Cooperative, and that is a regionally based group. Region mean New England and New York State. And that group, what it does is to promote research, but also share data from different members. And we just created the Connecticut State Partnership, and I'm a member of that. And last but not least, Great Mountain Forest just became a member of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN. And that is the world's largest environmental organization. It is composed of 1,400 members all over the world, like ourselves, and 17,000 experts. And so with all these groups that we're members of, so what are we doing and why are we connecting there? We believe that we want to first, we want to take a stand of in humility. We want to learn from others. We want to be more knowledgeable and see what information there is out there. But also we want to be participants in those conversations and engage in different programs and projects, like the ones I was telling you about, like carbon storage. And so with those examples, I'm giving you an example of how we went, you know, from just being a local jewel, and we still think we are, to having conversations at the global level. And well, I want to thank everyone for listening to me and to be interested in this topic. I heard that there's so many of you out there, about at least almost 100. And I want you to, you know, follow us on social media, email us, go to our website. I want to thank so many of our supporters, people who donate to the forest, and all those people that are, you know, come to our forest and enjoy the trails and really become inspired. I went to Great Mountain Forest the first time 16 years ago, and I was definitely inspired by the forest. I was in awe and by its beauty. And now as an executive director, as always amazed by the potential that this forest has for the community and for the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. Would everyone, if you have questions, would you kindly put them in the chat? And then I will take the role of the facilitator and then dole them out to Tamara. And let me just get it rolling. I see one question in the chat now. I see a couple more popping up, which is great. Tamara, could you give us an idea of sort of just a little bit of local recent history of Great Mountain Forest? Because I think a lot of people don't understand how there's been a recent shift, you know, with getting the 501c3 nonprofit status, and how that really helps Great Mountain Forest to be a community organization, and you know, so it's not for profit, because it's, you know, I look at things, I look at it and say, oh, it's a Great Mountain Forest Corporation. Does that mean it's for profit? But I know it's not, because that status has changed. So could you just give us a little bit of background of the recent history of GMF?
Yes, yes, I also want to mention that we were funded 110 years ago by visionaries that saw this degraded land in Connecticut and really wanted to conserve it and promote biodiversity and a flourishing ecosystem. So that was 110 years ago. And so in recent history, we became a nonprofit organization. And yes, even though we're called corporation, that's just our name, but no, we're a nonprofit organization. And so that we've been evolving from what was originally a family organization to a nonprofit with a board. We have a great staff. I don't know if some of the, you know, my colleagues are there on the webinar. And we're a team of 6 people, 9 in the summer with the interns that work on the operations of the forest. So doing forestry, and also on things like communications, administration, finance, etc.
Great, thanks. Well, I've got a couple of really good questions here. So I'm going to start with one from, I'll just say her name, Rebecca Schultz. She's asking, what would you say are the most immediate challenges for the forest in terms of climate change impacts?
I would say I could name 3 that come to mind. One would be so extreme weather events. So like we had last year with Hurricane Isaiah, that could be damaging for our forest. Also, climate change is definitely diminishing our maple syrup production. But the third one is that it's really shifting. The third one is kind of a compilation of several of them. Spreading invasive species that are finding a new welcoming environment, but also diseases for different species in the forest.
Thanks. So maybe some follow-up on that one. Got a lot of different questions here on carbon sequestration, and one from a local scientist is something I think a lot of people really wonder about. And I don't know whether there's an answer for this because it's probably still an open question. But the question is, does a mature forest sequester more carbon than a younger one?
So we know that a young forest doesn't sequester as much carbon as a mature forest. However, we don't know exactly at which age trees stop being as active sequestering carbon. Those are the questions that we're posing out there for more research and encouraging researchers to focus on that. We need more science there.
And isn't that some of the science is being done in terms of looking at the comparative sequestration rates of different species at different ages and their distribution in the forest?
Exactly. Yes. Because it's not a linear relationship. It's not, it's not necessarily just age, but also species composition with age.
Seeing some of these questions here, one thing that sort of comes up is the potential roles in the future as Great Mountain Forest becomes more integrated with the community, the role of citizen science in Great Mountain Forest, because we know that education is a big part of Great Mountain Forest's mission.
So citizen science, how do you define citizen science?
I myself just define it as sort of amateur science done by ordinary people who aren't professionals that are curious about how the world works and want to use the scientific method to ask questions about the natural environment.
So we do have already most of our wildlife census is done by amateur scientists who are wildlife enthusiasts that come to our forest and record species that they see in the forest.
Great. I see a question here from a friend of the forest, and I want to share that with you. And it's a little technical, but it's pretty clear this person really knows a lot about it. So she's asking, can you speak at all about the very early innovative research by Dr. Shu-Hui Lee at the Yale Forestry School and the Edward Childs to establish one of the first carbon flux towers in New England to actually calibrate and measure the uptake of carbon and nitrogen over the expanse of Canaan Mountain Forest canopy? This is something I've heard a little bit about. I'm curious, and it's kind of technical, so
it is very technical.
Get us, as much into the details as you like. But anyhow, it's interesting that they say this research went on for 25 years and put GMF on a global network of carbon flux measurement stations. So it seems really interesting.
Yes, so I'm not
for the nerds like me.
Yes, so I haven't become acquainted with all of the research that has been done in our forest over the years. But yes, that was one of the experiments that went for a very long time. It really had a strong impact in the knowledge of carbon in forests. So yes.
So is the flex tower still there?
Yes.
I think I know where it is. So can you give us an idea of how you see the education evolving at Great Mountain Forest, and what can we as citizens do to work with Great Mountain Forest, in terms of developing and evolving an educational program, because it's, it's kind of early days, because this is a new phase for Great Mountain Forest development after becoming a nonprofit.
So Great Mountain Forest has a history of educational programs that range from pre-K children to adults, and we have had many programs over the years. Unfortunately, because after I started working at the forest, we were hit by the pandemic and we had to cancel all of our educational programs. I haven't been able to experience many of them. So I'm going to speak from theory and from wishful thinking that in the future we will have some of them. So some of our, I think that some of our really powerful educational programs were, especially for children and younger adults, I always think that being inspired by being a forest, no matter what they do later on in life, they'll remember that experience that they have in that forest and what they learned there. And they'll become the future environmentalists, the future people that will be working to find solutions for climate change. So I think that's extremely powerful. Also, I think that it has been really important to link our educational programs with the community. We had wonderful lectures, like similar to what I'm doing today, but at a library, for example, with live people. And so the evolution of our educational programs, I think that we will do many educational programs. I think that we would like to take the pulse of what people want to learn from the forest, but there's so much to learn there, from science to just observing nature, you name it. So it's always a great opportunity. It's something that it's keen to who we are.
Well, thanks. There's a lot of interest in the data that Great Mountain Forest has accumulated and still continues to gather over the years. And one person is asking, with the climate change and related data, can we really see a hockey stick in the temperature rise, just like we see with CO2 in the atmosphere? Does the data at Great Mountain Forest show like the abrupt shift in climate? Is there something there that's really visible?
So the climate has warmed over time, over the 90 years. But what's really worrisome, I would say, is that in the last a little over a decade, the highest peaks in high temperature have been basically consistent over the last 10, 12 years. So not only is the climate getting warmer, is that our temperatures are going high. We're reaching higher and higher temperatures in the last 10 to 15 years. So that's significant. I don't want to get people depressed. That was one of the things that I said for this webinar, but it's true that it is worrisome.
Well, there's a lot of concern. I see a few questions related to what's happening elsewhere in North America, namely the forest fires like we're seeing out west. And there's a couple of questions about is Great Mountain Forest able to manage that forest fire risk as the climate warms, as we have periods of drought and the forest dries out? So how does that figure in the management plan for Great Mountain Forest? I mean, how are you looking at that? And what can we learn from Great Mountain Forest in our community for managing our risk for fires here in the region?
So some of our educational programs have been for firefighters that put out fires in other forests across the country. So that's one of the best educational programs that we've ever had. But We haven't consciously created a management plan specific for, to adapt to climate change. We're morphing as we go, but forest fires will be, they'll increase, but I don't think that will be the biggest problem in Connecticut, very differently from what happens out west or in California, where droughts and fires are number one climate change threats. In Connecticut is more about hurricanes or floods and lack of snow in the winter.
Well, I'm glad to see we have some snow this winter.
Yes.
That bodes well for our
Yes.
aquifers.
Yes.
And our runoff. Couple of questions about GMF as a reservoir of biodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think a lot of myself in particular, I'm thrilled by the idea that there are, what did you say, 21 moose?
Yes.
That have been, distinct moose in Great Mountain Forest now, probably a number of breeding pairs.
Yes.
So what sort of work is being done, or do you envision being done to sort of manage Great Mountain Forest as a reservoir of biodiversity in our region?
So one of the things that we do is to maintain a healthy forest that is a good habitat for all those species that live in our forest. I think with time, we need to be conscious of that. So one of the effects of climate change is ecosystem collapse and loss of biodiversity. So because I mentioned before that there's a number of tree diseases, and those trees are home to many species or food for many species. So we have to be conscious of that. And of course, invasives that are problematic also for wildlife.
Great. Well, since you mentioned invasive species, and Great Mountain Forest is, what I've heard you call it a living laboratory. So what are some of the lessons learned or lessons that are developing about how we can manage invasive species, here in Norfolk and the surrounding region as our climate changes and warms? Are there any sort of lessons or advice, or how can, what is Great Mountain Forest looking at, and what are the likely takeaways or lessons to be learned from Great Mountain Forest's work with invasive species and monitoring them?
So we've had some invasive species monitoring programs over the years, and also invasive species removal programs. But one of the decisions we have to make as a forest, and definitely our foresters, they have to make is, how much energy do we put into removal of invasive species? Because you could do it over and over again and it just never stops. So at some point you have to say, what am I okay living with? Because you're not going to eliminate invasive species. So that threshold, we haven't determined it yet. But it's true that invasives are problematic in northwestern Connecticut, but not comparable to the southern part of the state. So we're more or less okay, but we have to be vigilant.
What are some of the biggest problems you're encountering with invasive species? What in particular? Any? I'm thinking of the forest canopy and things that are affecting it, but then also down on the forest floor level, the ground cover, and then even in the soil. So any insights into what's going on there, things that you'll be monitoring, things that we can also monitor in our backyards here in Norfolk and surrounding area?
So the biggest threat of invasives is that they displace other species because they're advantageous from a genetic standpoint. So they adapt better to that newer environment. And so they don't allow other species to flourish so well. So whether it's seedling trees or other understory species that are not able to compete with the supreme the supreme genetics and adaptation qualities of invasives. So that's biggest problem.
So what can we expect with the forest canopy as it adapts to a changing climate? What are you expecting to see? I think, like a lot of people, I'm concerned about our hemlocks, our beautiful hemlocks that are kind of one of the dominant trees in the area.
Hemlocks, and then now beech leaf disease is one disease that is prevalent in the southern part of the state. We have some researchers taking data in our forest, so we need to know how is that developing, but we know with the changing climate that it'll be a problem. So beech, hemlock and beech for sure.
There's some interest in how Great Mountain Forest is connecting our community to the rest of the world. But let's start with the region. And one thing that's I think is an interesting development is Great Mountain Forest's role in migration corridors for various species. That probably explains why we have 21 moose here, because they got here somehow. Maybe some were lost along the way to highways and other barriers in their way. But can you tell us how Great Mountain Forest is connecting to other conservation projects in the region and in the more than in the greater region in the southern New England? Because it just seems that we have a real stellar scientific research organization, a working force in our community. So how do you envision seeing that connecting with other forests in the region, whether it's New York, Connecticut, Vermont, and what do you see? How do you see that developing in the future? I mean, is there going to be a sort of, I guess I'm thinking of cross-pollination, so we can learn how to share best practices with those other forests, and also how Great Mountain Forest can share best practices with the community here, with concerned citizens that want to manage their own small blocks of trees and forest.
So we can always create partnerships on a one-on-one basis. So we go to one forest or one natural area and we connect with them. But those efforts, I think where you get more impact for your efforts is through initiatives like the one that I mentioned before, the Forest Ecosystem Monitoring Cooperative, and that now has a Connecticut chapter, and we are choosing some research for the next year throughout the state. So that's one area where we connect with other forests and in other areas. But if there's not an initiative, just doing it individually, it's a little bit harder. So that's the avenue that I'm trying to look into. And also through the Governor Lamont group, we have been able to connect with other groups, research centers, universities, and other forests also, where we can share information.
Thanks. Since we're still in the midst of the pandemic, maybe you can help us understand, the role of Great Mountain Forest as a healthy forest, making for, a healthy community. So, how does that connect? I mean, it's it's kind of it's a very simple question, yet it's a really complicated one, because there's so many different ways that we as people living in this region are connected to our ecology, and how important it is for us to to live within this region in a way that that promotes the health of the forest, but also how the forest promotes our health. Can you discuss, just give us an idea of how you're looking at that in terms of whether it's ecosystem services or recreational and cultural services or provisioning services like carbon sequestration? Just give us maybe a big picture and a little picture.
Okay, so the pandemic so with the pandemic, one of the hardest things that we had to do right away was to cancel our educational programs. And that was so hard, so difficult. But then it was really wonderful that last year when we were on lockdown, we were an outlet for people to be outside and to enjoy nature. And so throughout the pandemic, we've been that outlet. People always came to our forest, but now there are greater numbers of people coming to our forest and enjoying nature because they can be out. And that is the best, I think, the best we can offer for the community in these times. Right now is prime cross-country skiing season, but throughout the year we have hiking programs. Last summer we were able to do a yoga program. We've spotted people doing meditation in the forest, which is so wonderful. And so you were saying, how does it affect mental health? There's so many studies that say that being in nature is good for your mental health, and so it promotes, happiness. And we want to be there in this always, but in these difficult times for sure. Be that place of enjoyment for people.
Great. So happy forest, happy people.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, this is a question sort of from me to you, and that's how can we as citizens support the forest, in ways, of course we can donate money, that's one
Yes.
way, but the pandemic is hopefully it's going to be kind of ebb a bit as people get vaccinated and we get back to a different normal, not the new normal, but a different normal. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, how can we connect with the forest in ways? I'm thinking of, how can we approach you if we have ideas for using the forest or want to take groups there or people that are interested in maybe, doing some citizen science in the forest. So what's the best way to do that? And what's their place of contact, at Great Mountain Forest, just so you can manage it, because I'm sure it will come in fits and starts, probably get a lot of questions after this, but so point of contact at Great Mountain Forest.
So the point of contact, yeah.
So people can send their ideas to you, things they'd like to do at Great Mountain Forest that would require, coordination and cooperation. So that's one. And then, how we can have educational programs evolve as, the pandemic begins to loosen up and we can get out and, social distancing becomes a little closer over time. So maybe I'm talking about 2022. I don't know. Hope it's not that long, but so really a two-part question,
Okay.
Points of contact and how we can, ask questions and, of you at Great Mountain Forest and connect with you and propose ideas for projects we might want to do. And then some ideas that you might have for how we can help Great Mountain Forest.
Okay. So point of contact. So you could find us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and you can connect with us there. You could go to our website, greatmountainforest.org, and you could also send us an email at info@greatmountainforest.org. And we always welcome ideas, comments. Also, if you come to our forest, we have kiosks at the entrance of the forest. You can leave us a note there, the old-fashioned way. We will read them. And so we love your comments. We love to know what's important to the community and those who visit our forest. And we believe that the pandemic is giving us time to think and reflect. So one of the things that we're doing as an organization is that we're revisiting our strategic plan and creating priorities for the next 5 years. So our educational programs will be definitely impacted by that strategic plan. And so in that time of reflection, we have, it's clear that having people in the forest is very important to us. And we want to understand what is our carrying capacity, what is, how many people can we have in the forest at a given time or throughout time, to not to have too much environmental damage, ecological damage. But we want to make an effort and discover and explore the area of human health and forests. So for that, we're right now talking to different experts in the area and hopefully creating some educational programs, as you said, in 2022, or when we can actually all be together in one place.
Great, thank you. I'm just seeing the hour is approaching, but just a couple of things, kind of some acknowledgement of there are a number of very technical questions about carbon sequestration and that, but I think that it might be better if people reached out to you directly about that or in different ways, because that's, I think that's getting into the weeds a bit. And there's also a lot of interest in maple syrup.
Of course.
And I'm sure that's a very much desired product of Great Mountain Forest. I don't know if that's available for sale anywhere.
Yes.
But
yes, we have maple syrup for sale at our offices, and you could find our address on our website. I love maple syrup for so many things. It's a non-timber forest product. That's the technical term. But also, as I said, it's a way of connecting with our community, not this year, but in the past and hopefully in the future, is where the community comes and sees how the maple syrup is produced and celebrates it, but also is the data that is giving us, that is so important, so we know how our climate is changing. So it's one of my favorite products.
Great. Well, I'm sure we all look forward to having some of that delicious GMF maple syrup, if you can get it. So we're all also hoping for a really good season. The sap is flowing well, and Great Mountain Forest can cook down some good syrup.
Well, we're not going to have maple syrup production this year because maple syrup production could pose risks to those that are working on it. So we've decided that this is not the year to do that. And so next year we'll produce maple syrup again.
Well, sad news, but good that it's going to happen next year.
Exactly.
Well, I think that, well, a couple of things. I just want to thank you, Tamara, for doing this talk. We look forward to having you come back next year and give an update. We can then, I'm sure a lot of things will be happening, because that will be 2022, and hopefully things will be opening up, and there'll be a lot of educational programs you can talk about. And I also want to mention to everyone that we've got another talk coming on March 22nd at the same time, 6 p.m. We're going to have Maria Horn talking about, well, there it is. This is beautiful, because I see Dawn has put it up there. Working with Connecticut communities during a changing climate. So that's going to be exciting. And Maria's a great speaker. And she told me that she really welcomes the opportunity to get out and sort of have like a town hall type event, much like we're doing with Tamara here. And it's great to see the interest in the forest. And I want to thank everyone for their participation. And we look forward to having Maria Horn next month. And then I think we're exploring the possibility of having a talk on climate change, art and aesthetics in Norfolk, Connecticut. So a little teaser there. I think that might happen in April, if the stars align. I think the stars will align. So once again, Tamara, thank you so much for a great talk, and also thank everyone for participating.
Yes,
And
thank you.
And then I want to thank
Thank you.
all of the co-sponsors and Don for doing all this great work and putting this together, organizing, making it all happen. So Don, do you want to have some closing remarks on behalf of the Hub and the Norfolk Foundation?
Yes, just a couple. Thank you so much. That was just a great engaging conversation and discussion between the both of you. So thank you so much. And as I watched all of the questions coming up in the chat, and I was scrolling through the attendee list, I just closed my eyes and envisioned everyone being together at the Hub. So that'll be something to look forward to when we can all be together again. But thank you all for your questions. I can see it framing future talks. So we'll certainly look at those questions, the ones we didn't get to, and make sure that we address them all. And so we have the next one coming up on March 22nd. Give me till about the end of the week to get the link up to register. But we'll see you all again next month. And thank you again, Tamara, Tom. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
And also, Don, there'll be a recording of
Thanks,
this talk available. Is that correct?
We did. I started it a little bit late, rookie error, but we have all the questions recorded. But the initial part when I was talking and you were introducing, I forgot to hit record. But
That's all right. But you'll be putting it on the Norfolk, the Hub website or the foundation
we'll
website?
get it out multiple ways. Oh, if anybody's still out there, I do have a quick poll just to see how everybody heard about us. It might be too late. Most everybody has left. But if you're still hanging on there and you want to let us know how you heard about this webinar, that'll help us gauge where we need to promote our webinars. So I'll leave it open I guess it gives you about a minute or so to do so. Any final thoughts, the both of you?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone, all the people who were there listening, and to the organizers, Don and Tom. Thank you for a great webinar.
And I want to thank all of the people that are involved with the Norfolk Climate Coalition. It's a growing group, and what's really inspiring about it is that I think there's great interest in how we can adapt and kind of build resilience in the face of a changing climate. And I know there's great interest in citizen science, which is why I was asking so many questions about that. And I'm sure that as things open up, we'll be looking to do a lot of things in Great Mountain Forest, whether it's recreational, cultural, scientific. But I am so pleased that we have this great asset in our community, a working forest in southern New England. And I think we're very fortunate. And that's why I'm happy to live in Norfolk. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
There we go. I think it's dinner time. Don, thank you very much.
Yes. Did I stop it? I think I did. Yeah.
Oh, there's still participants, so we're still online.
We're still, okay.
Hello out there, participants.
Hello.
I see 14 people, they're dropping off. And Rob Russ is saying he heard about it's in the chat there.
Okay. I'll take a download of the chat. So, and I'll put it into a Word document so that we can look at all the other questions too.
Great, yeah, and also it's nice to have a registration list of who participated. Yep. So then you can put that on your mailing list, right?
Right, yes, exactly. Yeah. And we can follow up with them with future, future invitations. So it's great.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so glad. I'm looking forward to Maria, and I think we're going to have that talk in April on climate and art and aesthetics.
Nice.
Which should be interesting because we've got so many great artists living here in this community.
Yeah, I think that'll be amazing. That'll be amazing. Tom Strumala was also, wanting to be in touch about a talk as well. So maybe even a fourth.
Yeah, I saw that. That's great. Well, we definitely want to have Tom do that. So let's see, maybe have him do something in May,
Yeah,
depending on what comes up.
Yeah.
And also I saw that we had a lot of people from GMF on there. I recognize them.
yes.
And some of them friends of GMF coming out with very technical questions on carbon sequestration, but we'll let Tamara get back to them on that.
Yeah. And
It's
I did
above
see
my
some,
pay grade.
yeah, I was watching that. I was like, wow, those are some tough questions. So, but yeah, all good stuff.
All right, well, thank you so much. And the publicity and everything was great. I think we had a really good turnout. I mean, I
think
saw
so. Yeah.
close to 100. I was like, maybe did it go above 90, I think, but that's great.
I think, yeah, it hovered right around there. There ended up being 120 registered. So,
Well, that's a fabulous participation rate. I mean,
huge.
that's amazing. Usually you get like less than half of the people that register. So
Right.
Very good.
Yeah. And, and even if we were to do it in person, we couldn't hold that many people at the hub. So this is a great avenue for us. So.
Well, let's keep developing it further. So thanks so much. I'm going to sign off here. I can smell dinner.
Excellent. Have a good
So
evening, Tom.
stay safe and stay warm, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.